setkání v rámci našeho cyklu odborných přednášek. Tentokrát se zahraniční přednášející. Nejprve v češtině základní informace, prosím vás, pošlu vám prezenční listiny, všichni prosím podepište, protože toto je součást jednoho projektu. And now in English. It's really nice to welcome you here at our faculty. I hope you will enjoy it, and I'm really grateful for your efforts to present the results of your research.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great pleasure to welcome our special guest, Professor Candiotto. And I'm also grateful to my colleague, the organizer of this lecture series, provided all the academic and technical background. Thank you. And I welcome all my colleagues too. Now let me introduce our guest. Laura Candiotto is a professor of philosophy at the Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies at the University of Manchester, and a senior researcher at the Center for Ethics. Laura has an impressive academic report. She obtained a PhD at Pakistani University of Tunis under the supervision of Professor Candiotto, in collaboration with the French National Center for Scientific Research, Paris, and the Sorbonne University of Paris under the supervision of Professor Candiotto. She has worked as a research fellow at numerous institutions, including the University of Edinburgh and the University of Exeter University. She was also a senior research fellow at the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation at the Free University. Her research interests include the philosophy of emotions, social epistemology, ethics of knowledge, environmental ethics, and so on, to name just a few of her many areas of expertise. She's the author of Le vie della comparazione, ideology strategy. Together with Olivier Renaud, she edited the recent volume Emotions in Plato, published by Brill. Then she edited The Value of Emotions for Knowledge, published by Calvary, and she is the author of numerous chapters and articles in prestigious journals. So today, she will present a paper, Emotions in Epistemic Culture. So please enjoy the talk and the process.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Thank you for this very kind introduction. I'm very happy to be here with Usti and having the chance to meet you, to discuss with you my current project. So what I want to present is like first the background. So what I did in the last years on the epistemology of emotions, because my main field is really philosophy of emotions. And then, in the second part of the talk, I would like also to present what I'm doing with this current Yatra project that I started in January. So now it's April, so I'm really at the beginning. So the big plan is writing a monograph out of it. So I'm very happy also to discuss with you because, you know, I'm at the beginning and preparing a good proposal. So I'm very curious to hear what you think about this. So I moved here because I needed to work with the computer, not just because I wanted to be with a table in between us, sorry for this, but I'm going to move now the slides. Okay, so I would like to start with a quote from Peirce, who is one of the founder of the American Pragmatist School, and we can read it together. The mere putting of a proposition into the interrogative form does not stimulate the mind to any struggle after belief. There must be a real and living doubt. And without this, all discussion is idle. And then it continues in saying, the irritation of doubt causes a struggle to attain a state of belief. I shall term this struggle inquiry. So for me, these two quotes are quite significant because they express the real life experience of a quest for knowledge or a quest for truth, even we can say. And for me, it is really a way also for the people what is scientific inquiry and philosophy. As Veronica said, I work a lot on Plato. So for those of you who knows Plato, I think that you can see some Platonic influences in here, although really the pragmatist philosophy is very different from Platonic philosophy, but still the relevance of inquiry. If you think about Socratic inquiry, questioning, engaging with aphoretic states, the fundamental, I don't know, this fundamental acknowledgement of your ignorance that push you to look for an answer seems to be really a fundamental component of what does knowledge mean. Well, and there is also something more in this book that is what really interests me, is that this sort of inquiry is not just what we can call like cognitive or merely rational inquiry. Here is said that there is an irritation of doubt, right? And also a struggle to attain a belief. So this expression says something about what we can call an affective experience, something that really moves us, a fundamental concern. And in the first quote, he even says that without a real and living doubt, all discussion is idle, means no sense, it's just abstract. Why are we going to do it if the inquiry is not really replying to something that we really don't know, that is something that is fundamental for our life, that there is an existential meaning in there. So I will work with this intuition and with these insights that say that, well, when we speak about knowledge and knowledge production and knowledge management, we need to take into account this affective experience. But of course, the point is understanding what does it mean, what kind of affective experience, what emotions, and what do they do there? Is something that can be beneficial, helpful for knowledge, or is something that obstructs maybe our quest for the truth? So we will discuss this together today. And but first, I would like to just let you think a bit about your own experience as researchers, students, but also, in your daily life, maybe when you are really struggling to understand something, and so here I just put some photos, some pictures that you can maybe relate to your experience. I don't know, I don't want to project this. Each of you can think about your own experience, but there can be boredom, desperation, but also like excitement. Look what I found, enthusiasm, or also, this state when you are in a library that you are carefully analyzing everything for trying to go deeper into the question and the answer. So there are very and different affective experiences that can be in place there. Just think about your experience as a student or as a researcher. And also, I would like to make you think about this social dimension of inquiry, because these features were about just one single epistemic agent, is how we call this in epistemology, So it's the subject who is pursuing the research, the epistemic agent. Epistemic is from episteme in Greek, that means knowledge or science, okay? So the subject who is pursuing the knowledge production. Okay, so we have this kind of stereotypes, I would also say, that this epistemic agent is just one, that we, within ourselves, we are struggling with this quest of, I don't know, actually. But still, if you think again about your experience, very often this dissent or not understanding emerge when you discuss with someone else than you, right? Because maybe if you are just by your own, you are just convinced about something, but it's just having a dialogue with someone else that can push you to go deeper or is challenging your views, allows you to revise your point of view, etc. This actually seems to be a fundamental dimension of inquiry. And again, think about Socratic dialogue, that it was really the social dimension of learning and making knowledge. So here really I wanted to make you think about this brainstorm around the table, that there is a storm really. But what does this word mean, right? That there is a storm, that there is something that is moving on around the table when the people are discussing, especially when we do philosophy. As philosophers, we really love to engage in this kind of debates. But I guess also in other disciplines, especially when we disagree, there is a lot of passion going on there. Okay, so now let me elaborate a bit more on this. This was really for grounding this in our own experience. Now I'm trying to do some philosophy out of it, okay? So I would say that it might be argued that emotions, or this for now, just I will call them emotion. I will explain in a moment what we can mean by emotion. But it might be argued that emotion is just a contextual factor. I mean, that yes, they are there, we cannot deny that they are there, but why should they matter for knowledge? Okay, so they would not play any relevant epistemic role, so they do not really relate to what is knowledge. And so here this objection might be, so why then excitement, discouragement, self-reliance, and many other states that we can find should count in our quest for the truth? Well, this question and this objection actually motivated me to write many books and paper for trying to say, no, they matter. And I will now explain why. And in this book that Veronica mentioned also, I collected different views for replying to this question. And so here there is a plan for today's talk. So I will start with presenting some theories of emotion. Then I will challenge a functionalist view of emotions. We will see in a moment what it is. And then we will advance my argument for a situated account of emotions in epistemic cultures. So stressing very much the social dimension of knowledge and emotions. And this will allow me to go into the ethics of knowing, that is the specific topic of my Gotcha project. So let's start with these theories of emotions. So we have many, and the point is, what is emotion? Okay, and so the taxonomy, how we can really understand what emotions are and what is their role in our life. So here I listed some of them, and I think that it's important to present them at least briefly, just for trying to clarify the field. So I would say that the first theory is the one that we can call the feeling-centered approach, or approaches in plural. So this theory assumes that emotions are feelings, embodied feelings. And this resonates very well, I would say, with our emotions, because maybe when I have fear, I feel my heart that is beating faster, or my hands started to be a bit muddy, or I started to feel butterflies in my stomach, all these things. And this view is also quite traditional, we say, because the word emotion is quite new as to do, starting in the 18th century, with 18th, 19th century, with the psychological investigation into it. But the philosophical study of emotions started with the idea that emotions, what we now call emotions, are passions. So what does it mean that they are passions? So they are something that is acting upon us. We are passive towards them. I cannot do something for stopping this increasing of heart rate that is going on. Well, now we know that we can do something, there are practices. But the point here is that something from the outside is coming to me, and this creates a reaction. That is what we call passion. From passing is a form of suffering, so we suffer this experience. This is the traditional view about emotions, and actually it has been also revised in the contemporary time and say that, well, yes, they are still passion, but we can have a stronger understanding of what is the body and the embodiment of the emotions. So this feeling theory stressed very much that emotions are something that has to do with the body, being embodied beings, and also that, for example, the pragmatists that I mentioned at the beginning, they have this view that emotions are embodied, William James, for example, but they say that emotions are mostly a mental state about a change that happens in our body. So it is not just the change in my body, but what kind of state, mental state, came out of it? Fear, right? So fear is not just the beating of my heart. It's a mental state about this change in myself from having the heartbeat going in a certain pace and going fast. Well, there have been criticism of this view, especially from the cognitivist point of view, that say, oh, well, but this view really makes emotions something irrational, something that we cannot control, completely unintelligent. It's really like a disease, and we need to free ourselves from them. So the cognitive thinkers, mostly Martha Nussbaum and Solomon, Robert Solomon, advanced the cognitivist view about emotions. So they say, no, emotions are not this embodied feeling that we talked about, but they are intelligent. They are actually a mental state that is saying something about ourselves, the world, and so like it's really acknowledging the value of a situation through emotions. This was a fundamental step in the philosophy of emotion that started to happen around the 90s, and it was really very crucial in the development about the study of emotions. And this also went hand in hand with some neuroscientific discoveries about the role of emotions in cognition. And so there have been really proof that emotions are not anymore this opposite of cognition. But at the beginning in the 90s, they started to show that emotions and cognition are interacting always. Then after 10, 15 years of research, they show that they are integrated. So that is different from interaction to really being integrated. So it seems that we cannot have cognition without emotions, right? And we cannot also have emotions without cognition. Still, there have been a lot of criticism also of this view because it seems that, yes, it is very important to acknowledge that emotions are intelligent, but really this fight against our experience, emotions are really what we feel also, right? They are in our body. We are not just brains. And not only, it is very interesting this because one of the main papers written by Martha Nussbaum about this cognitivist approach on emotions, what about grief? And she was speaking about grieving for the death of her mother. And really, she was describing this without giving value to the felt experience of not having her mom anymore. Really seems like, yes, they are intelligent. They're saying something about the value of my mother that is not there anymore. But really, she was saying that our crying, our loneliness, and what is happening out of there doesn't count as emotion. So many philosophers argued against this view as something that is too much, I would say. So the idea is that just stressing that emotions are embodied or that emotions are intelligent cognitive states are two extremes. So there have been some ways of trying to find a solution. One is the perceptual model that here is precisely in between. So they say that emotions are not really like propositional states, assenting to something. This is Nussbaum view, but are like perception. How we perceive a situation is the how of the experience. And perception is more direct, immediate, and it has direct contact with the body, but still also is active and is doing something to the situation, Also, this was very much also related to the idea that through emotions we project our states in certain situations, like that through jealousy we started to perceive a world of jealousy. So like that we see that our partner is cheating on us everywhere. Why? Because we have this jealous perception that make us understand and interpret every action of our partner as cheating. Okay. This was one way. Another way was the one of the affective intentionality approach, that actually is one that I think that is the one that makes more sense to me. So I argued for.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
An artificial agent wanted to interact when I said that this is my view. So intentionality. No. Well, let's see. Okay. So the affective intentionality approach really focuses on the idea that emotions are qualities of our way of relating to the world. So like intentionality, the theory of intentionality in philosophy, but intentionality with a specific quality that is an affective way of relating to the world, to the others. And so the point there is really stressing that emotions are not internal states, neither embodied or within our brain, but it's really how we relate to the world. And through this, how we relate to ourselves. And so there is an element of cognition there, because intentionality is really make us the world revealed to us. We discover the value of it, but how? In an affective manner. So here we have something more, but it will be a bit quicker about them, but just to focus on two important points. The first one is that, of course, not only philosophy is working on emotions. Psychology and psychoanalysis have a branch of studies on this. And so especially the narrative approach is very important. So it says that emotions are not these direct and instinctual, I would say, forces that are within us, but is a way through which we revise our past, our identity, we make ourselves. They emerge out of practices. Here we have writing a diary, right? So emotions has very much to do with reflection, reflecting on ourselves and how we make our history. So for this approach, we really needed to have a diachronic view of emotions. And this view really is challenging the view that emotions, the temporality of emotions is very short. Like we think about an outburst of anger as a prototype of emotion. For this approach, this is really not really the prototype of what an emotion is. Something that develops through time, change, grief and love are very often the two emotions, or I prefer in this case, in terms of affective states that are mentioned. And the second point that we wanted to mention is the one that is related to the agency-based account. So the idea that emotions are not just something that is or mental or embodied, but that has really to do with our ways of acting in the world. So this view really says that emotions are actions. And here I have, as a picture, a scene from a theater performance, because this theory says that emotions are really a kind of performance. So how we interact in the social spheres and we take certain roles with others and how we are signaling something through our behaviors. It's very related to the behaviorist account of emotions, but it is really very much focused on actions. And well, the multi-component approaches, just to summarize, is the idea, well, this is also all very interesting, but the problem is just saying what emotion is, just giving one definition. This approach says that we have to have a broader view, And so speaking in terms of dimension, so emotion is a multi-component experience that has a body dimension, has a cognitive dimension, has an action-oriented dimension, has an intentionality dimension, and so on. So this was like a summary of years of discussion about this. And well, you can ask me later if you are curious to know more about this. So now I think that I can use this word emotion in a way that you can have this broader picture in the background. So today I prefer not to give you a definition, but just that you relate it to emotion, just having in mind that emotion can be all of these things that I mentioned. Okay? And so now the question is, do we really need emotions for knowledge making? And for knowledge making, it really mean what I was saying before, these processes of inquiring, engaging with doubts, etc. And here we have another quote from Fuquay, who said, while everyone would agree that anger or envy can have a role in explaining our epistemic failings, few theorists insist that appropriate patterns of affective response may be required for inquiring or believing well. So I think that this quote is really important because it points to something that is quite common, I would say, both in the philosophical literature but also in our experience. Namely, that emotions are there, they might play a role in knowledge, but the role that they are playing is very bad. So we need to purify ourselves from emotions. And so we can say, yes, anger or envy are playing a role in knowledge production, but they are making us doing what is called epistemic fakes. So making us do mistakes of understanding, of interpretation, of settling the hypothesis, and so on. And they say only few theorists will say that, on the contrary, emotion can help us for thinking well or believing well. Of course, here we really need to understand what does it mean inquiring well or believing well. And this is all my research on this ethics of knowledge, because using the expression well, here it seems that there are good and bad manner of inquiring. It is not a neutral activity. And so in this case, I endorse the approach that is called virtue and vice epistemology. So the idea that we enact certain intellectual virtues or vices that make us inquiry in a certain manner, good or bad. And we will see in a moment what does it mean. So here, let's try to define a bit more what types of emotions we are referring to here. And these are what in the literature is called epistemic emotions. I know this might sound a bit abstract, but the usual example is the one of curiosity. So curiosity is said to be an epistemic emotions because it seems that through curiosity we engage in knowledge processes. So we, for example, want to know more about something, right? And without this curiosity, maybe we will not explore an issue further. We are not going to read the materials and so on. And so there are two views about epistemic emotions. The first one is the one that I call strong view, and the other is the weak view. The strong view says that emotions as curiosity are epistemic. Why? Because they motivate to knowledge. Why they motivate to knowledge? Because they have the truth as their intentional object. So they are aiming at the truth, aiming at discovering the answer to a question. This definition is strong because it relates emotion to the truth, but is also quite demanding because it excludes other cases in which the truth might be not our final
final aim. And so there have been authors who stressed a more pluralistic view that say, well, but emotions are epistemic because maybe they help us in judging a situation, in interpreting a situation, they are making us change or revising our mind because we are dissatisfied. But so these authors are trying to not create this very strong link between emotions and the truth. So I advanced this view that I think that it is important to keep the truth in our perspective. About this, I have many enemies around in the debate, and we can discuss this if you want. But I think that there is this fundamental link between what is called our veritic desire. So we want to know the truth about something. But my point is that emotions cannot achieve this per se, as if there is this direct link between emotions and the truth, like that naturally curiosity will lead us to the truth. But that emotion can be epistemic in this strong manner only if they are embedded in virtuous epistemic cultures, in virtuous epistemic practices. And in saying that, I valorize the weaker view, the one that is pluralistic, that is situated, that really show that this can happen only from within certain contexts. And a note here is important. Michael Brady, who is a quite important philosopher of emotions from Glasgow, is also arguing for the strong view about emotions, but he says, well, this does not mean that emotions need to do all the job, because this is a usual criticism. Say, okay, so if you say that emotions are what lead us to the truth, what about reasoning, critical thinking, and judgment, understanding? Of course, the view is not that emotions do all alone. It is that emotions are integrated into these practices. So his view is that emotions can be epistemic as helpers of these processes. And he explained that they are helpers as what orientate or focus our attention, making the object of inquiry salient, speaking to us. Remember what I said at the beginning about first, when there is a real and living doubt, okay? So there is an issue there. And what certain emotions can do there is making this salient, relevant to your existence. And so making you concerned about this, worried about this. And so engaging into the inquiry about it. Okay, so here we can summarize and see that emotions, understood in this manner, can serve these three functions: evaluative, motivational, and hermeneutical. So evaluative, meaning that they help us in understanding or assessing a situation; motivational, as curiosity, because they motivate us to inquiry; and also hermeneutical, meaning that they are part of this sense-making activity, why it is relevant to us in the disclosure of value. Well, until now, speaking about emotions, I was using this functionalist framework, like, okay, what is the functions of emotions? What roles are they serving? They can help us in motivating the agent, etc., etc. I think that this way is good for some reasons, because make us really understand that emotion can actually play a role in knowledge production. But there is a problem related to it, that it makes everything like a machinery, like a process. So you care only about the process and not about what they call it at the beginning, the epistemic agent. And, and if I am right that emotions can be epistemic only if they are embedded in epistemic culture, in epistemic practices, in virtuous epistemic culture, where could we find these virtue and vices if not in the character of the epistemic agent? So, aligning with Adam Morton, I say that we cannot understand emotions in this sense of epistemic, etc., without focusing on intellectual virtues or vices. So the character traits or the abilities, if you want, of the epistemic agent. Here, as a side note for the classicists in the room, this can resound Aristotle of virtue and vices. So it's quite interesting to see these connections. But well, here, why I am bringing this? Because it can help us in understanding why emotions can lead to the truth. What is the truth? It's just this propositional knowledge about an information about what is the case. And if it is so, how is possible that emotions motivate this? The point here is that the truth is what matters to us, that has a value. So it has really to do with the value of truth. And here the point is understanding in which sense the value of truth can be objective and personal, so mattering to us, being really something that has to do with our concern. And so I argued in this manner that if we agree that we need to focus on the epistemic character, I mean, the virtues and the vices of the epistemic agent, epistemology is not disjuncted by ethics. So we really need to focus on what has been called ethics of knowing. And so really thinking how we engage in knowledge actually, and through which cultures and character traits, virtues, and behaviors. And so there are some assumptions here. The first one is that knowledge and knowledge production is not just abstract thinking, but that knowledge is not neutral and it is not detached, but is really grounded on the abilities of the epistemic agents. And so that this is related to being moved by existential concerns, by living doubts. And this really has to do also with what we value when we learn or teach or we make knowledge. So the point here is really thinking about what the researcher or the student cares about. So it has to do, if you want, with something that is intrinsic, an intrinsic motivation. And so this interest is an interest of knowing more and better about something. So this epistemology has been called loving epistemology. And here there's a picture of one colleague who developed this view, Hannah de Jaeger. And she really said that epistemology is not really just about this abstract reasoning that can be expressed in mathematical formulas, etc. Epistemology, the practice of knowledge, has really to do with what we love. She even used the expression love. We can discuss about this if it is too much. I personally prefer to use the word care, so caring about something. But for her, it was really important to stress that this is epistemology has to do with loving the object of your inquiry, because for her, love is really this specific way of engaging with your object of inquiry, in taking care of it. And about this, we can really discuss about different scenarios and cases of real life cases and what does this mean. But of course, it is a manner of understanding knowledge that neutrality and objectivity are not the only paradigms of knowing, and also that is not a method from the outside. It's interacting, it's engaging with the object of the inquiry. So here I'm trying, this is just a little recap, to stress both the subjective dimension of the inquiry, that could be expressed also in terms of embodiment or the personal virtues and vices, and the situatedness. So we needed to read things in terms of epistemic practices. And so I would say that inquiry is embedded in epistemic cultures, ways of managing knowledge. And for going a bit deeper into it, I would like to explore this case with you, and maybe we can read it together, just to be more precise. So Hannah is a young scholar trained in theoretical physics. She is enthusiastic about her research and proud of having got some funding for pursuing her project recently. These emotions motivate her to work hard for getting some results. For example, they can motivate her to display the intellectual virtue of resilience in front of the difficulties that can arise in the research process. However, Hannah might also feel anxious about getting those results because she needs to provide some answers to the funding body. She might also fear that without these results, her application for tenure will be unsuccessful. These emotions can also trigger some intellectual biases in scientific misconduct, for example, carelessness in analyzing the data for getting to a publication quicker. These opposite scenarios are not just up to Hannah. They are dependent upon the situation she is in and the problems and expectations it unfolds. So here I would like to provide this definition of virtue epistemic culture and virtuous epistemic culture. So this is something new from what I know, because there was really good idea that yes, we are engaging with epistemic culture, but these are more like neutral. I would say that this context has a strong impact on what kind of emotion can be felt by Hannah. So I define that emotions can be truth conducive if and only if they are embedded in virtuous epistemic cultures. And they are not if they are embedded in vicious epistemic cultures. But what is the difference between these two? So, virtuous epistemic cultures are the ones that support processes of knowledge building, for example, by promoting the development and employment of particular intellectual virtues as virtuous ways of conducting inquiry, and the other are what obstruct, hinder the productions of these virtues by instilling biases on the contrary. So here we can consider the example of the publish or perish culture. I don't know if you students heard about this, but we academics are very much, unfortunately, immersed in this culture. So there is the idea that if we don't publish enough, we are going to perish, we're going to die. And this is a culture that I would say that is not neutral. There are some consequences of this. Okay, so it might be that Hannah, remember our case, needs to get quicker results, and this might induce in her the bias of being carelessness, for example, or adding some fraudulent data into the research just for getting there. Well, maybe this case can be strange for you students, so that's why I wrote ChatGPT. I don't know if you used it in a lab when we're starting to use this, but we're discussing this with our students in Portuguese, in saying that, of course, ChatGPT can help us. So our approach is not really the one to say, no, you are not going to use it, but you need to use it with intelligence. The point is that if you are in a culture that does not valorize certain manner of conducting the research, you just copy and paste for ChatGPT and submit your essay without checking the results. But this is an intellectual bias. I think that you can see it. And what is the problem? That maybe you're submitting an essay with false data. So a virtuous will be, okay, I can engage with ChatGPT, but I need to check if what is said is correct. So I need to check the information. So, for example, they say that you can read this paper for substantiating this view, and then you're going to check and read at least a summary of this and see if it exists. Because actually, you know that many times they hallucinate. They really just make results for providing you an answer, but it is not there. I can assure you about this. So this is very risky, and that's why we need an ethics of knowledge there. And I think that there the matter is really what kind of virtues and vices we are employing in when we are taking part to this culture. Okay, but how I express it now, it seems that it's just up to you to say, okay, we'll be very virtuous and check all that ChatGPT will tell me. Instead of submitting this so quick, I will take one day for checking the information and let's see. The point for me is that this, in a way, is an individual responsibility, but has a lot to do with the environment in which you are in. Because there are situations that can push you of not doing it. Again, the publisher parent situation. If you really do not have time and you need to publish 3 papers in 1 month, how can you really check all this information? Why the shortcut will not seem to you kind of appealing? So I would say that here I wanted to keep it open, and I will provide an answer also to this issue in a moment. But what is the main contribution of having this situated approach to emotions and having a virtue and vice epistemology approach? The first benefit is really focusing on the actual practices of knowledge building and see that they really have to do with our care and concerns, something that has to do with our real life and existence. And the point is really understanding this connection between ethics and epistemology. And the second point, that is the one that I wanted to work a bit more with you for other 10 minutes, is that not all emotions that are embedded in scientific context are epistemic. So we can think that really epistemic emotions are just emotions that have to do with knowledge. Not at all, because there are many emotions that can really support, facilitate viceful cultures like epistemic oppression, epistemic corruption, epistemic servility, all these cases of mind shaping through emotions in research teams and institutions. And this is really the topic of my current project. Really try to understand when emotions can be vehicle for manipulating these processes of the making of knowledge. And at the same time, I want to focus when emotion can still play their positive role. And so in particular, I will work on what, in line with feminist epistemology, we call emotional friction. So I think that still thinking in terms of virtue and vice, good and bad, could be problematic. When we are embedded in a situation, the situation is always more complex. There are many emotions and many states involved. And this actually could be very good because can create a friction, like a dissent, a conflict in us that requires us to revise and to change the situation in certain cases. And so this has to do with what is called epistemic responsibility. So is the responsibility or the duty, the obligation to know well. And so here, remember what I was saying before about indoctrination, servility, mind shaping, etc. So I said that the responsibility was not just up to Hannah, remember? And I wanted also to stress for this case of the publish or perish culture. So we have what is called a responsibility problem. So if we analyze real life cases and we don't have an idealized view of what is knowledge, just focusing on virtues, but we have this approach that is the one of vice epistemology, we see that in many situations, it seems that the students or the researchers are kind of forced to employ certain vices. It is not really and completely up to them. So a certain closed-mindedness can really unfold if you are being educated or enculturated in a very strong manner. This is called indoctrination. So how could agents possibly be blamed for displaying biases in this case? And this is a real a real problem. And so in this project, I'm replying to this problem. And my way is creating a distinction between what can be called acquisition responsibility, so the responsibility of acquiring certain vices from the culture in which we are embedded, and revision responsibility, so the duty to revise what we acquired. And my point is, if we very often are not responsible for acquiring vices, we are responsible to revise them. And I would say that there are certain emotions that can help us, again, emotions as helpers, to undertake this revision process. So, what is the specific contribution of emotions to belief, revision, responsibility? So, here remember what I said already about the functions of emotions and can be transformed in this manner. First, to focus our attention towards certain epistemic culture that need to be carried off, like promoting these cultures that can support to believe well. So this also implies to motivate to break down certain epistemic cultures that induces vices. So if we agree that the parish of parish culture is a vice-based culture, the motivation that can emerge out here is that we need to change this. And by what? By creating other cultures in which more participatory and peer-based epistemic practices are supported. And the point that is more important for me in this project is that certain emotions can trigger these generative tensions in how we make sense of them. So this is more like a plan for my project. As I told you, I'm really at the beginning of the project, but the first point, and I think that this is quite clear now, that I will offer an account that I call non-voluntarist. I mean that is not based on direct control over the culture, because you can acquire vices without wanting to do it, and I will ground this in a situated account of emotions. Second, a focus on the culture, so not only the lonely individual epistemic agent, but seeing how it is situated in certain culture. And then working on emotional friction under the pressure of vicious epistemic culture. So I would say that one of the hypothesis of this project is that we are immersed in vicious epistemic cultures. Our life is not ideal, so it's really a real life approach. But being there, really experiencing oppression and all these problems can trigger the motivation for transformation. And so here the point is really understanding emotion as the motivating reason for change. And this will go in hands with the understanding of what habits can support this. And I'm very interested on habits of co-inquiry. So if we come back to the examples of Hannah and the public parish culture, maybe she would not display this attitude if in a conversation with the team members or the head of the department, we find the support of behaving in a different manner, but not only the support, but also the practical situation that will change and will allow her to have the time of producing good papers. And so also for the students, So if your teacher would valorize your effort on checking what ChatGPT is doing and really giving value to this, to your care and concern instead of just submitting, an essay and check it. So this is the last point. I know that I'm speaking for long, but I wanted to show you why this might be relevant today. So I was speaking about epistemic culture. I say that epistemic cultures are not neutral. There are good and bad ones. So I take climate denialism, so a culture that deny that climate change is ongoing, as a vicious epistemic culture. This is my starting point. I know that also this can be discussed, there might be disagreement, but the point here is that denying that, for example, scientific evidence about what is going on in the planet is true. This is what we can call denialism about the climate, has an important connection with our affective experiences, not only ignorance. Well, I don't know, I don't trust what is the source of information. This idea that in this denial there is something existential that is challenging us. So my point, since I take this stance, I would say, about this, is really in which ways emotions can motivate to debunk, to show that these are really viceful culture, online climate denialism. Yes, sorry, here I didn't explain, but the point for me is also seeing how this climate denialism is taking place in the online spheres. So the kind of complex interaction debate that are happening online. And so the point is, how could they urge agents to pursue the truth about climate change? So how could they be epistemic, actually? So remember what I was saying at the beginning about what are these epistemic emotions. So I would work on the ethics of sense-making. So how really we make sense of the climate change, how we understand it, how we interpret it, and how it's meaningful to us. So really working on the existential significance of this. And again, as I told you many times, I think that now you are following me in this, how we make sense about something, in our case about climate change, is not neutral. It's really affectively laden. So there are some emotions there. So it's very important to acknowledge the relevance for our life about this, and so responsibly managing how we interpret the worlds we inhabit. So here I have two hypotheses that I wanted to at least advance and show you how I tackle this. The first one is that this climate denialism, especially online, has to do with certain dynamics that are related to trust. And so there is all an issue that has not only to do with climate change, but about trusting science. And it seems that there is even more skepticism after the COVID pandemic about this. So I will go into it to see how certain cultures manipulate our trust, making us trust certain sources and not others. And then I will go deeper into the existential relevance of this, and really see in the case of climate change, how this is related to the existential threat to our life. And that's why we cannot accept that a climate change is ongoing. This is the first point. The second hypothesis is that we can, and this is the more constructive option, and that's why I'm interested about also the communication dynamics online about these issues, is that through what I call cultures of co-inquiry, so taking part to a participatory processes of trying to understand what is going on, this could be really the way for trying to resisting this manipulation of trust that I was depicting in the first hypothesis. And so, since I stress in here this word resisting, here the point would be really this friction. So really perceiving that there is something that is not working okay, but this really creates this concern, these problems that will make us eventually try to revise the belief. But these are still hypotheses, and here just a very quick advertisement, if I can. I cannot do this just by my own. I need a postdoc helping me in doing this. So now we have a job opening for working with me in this project. So if you know somebody that can be interested in working with me on this, and specifically about this topic of online climate denialism, the call is open until end of June, and it will be for 2 years. So here we are really at the end of the presentation, but I just want to stress how this is related to this ethics of knowledge. And this ethics in this regard has really to do with a responsibility to dismantle certain words. So here we say certain epistemic cultures. Now I just skip down this slide because I want also to speak a bit with you, but here there is the reference to emotional friction as what can really create this word breaking. And this is important for me because I was speaking about understanding, and sense making. An important component of sense making is also sense breaking. So really this critical dimension of challenging what is not working properly. And so I would like to end with this question. What does it mean to cultivate our ethical sense-making in a participatory manner, not just by our own, but with the help and support of others? And so the conclusion is that we need to avoid what is called epistemic individualism, thinking that responsibility is just up to us, or that we can solve the situation just by our own. We need to focus on the cultures in which we are embedded and situated, but this does not mean necessarily that we cannot do anything about it. So we need to recognize that there is a responsibility problem, so that we acquire biases just being embedded in certain situations, but we are in that situations, so this is real life. And so the point is seeing what can emotion do in being there, and the hypothesis that I hope to argue for it and showing that it is the case is really triggering this process of revision through emotional friction. And I would say that the case of climate denialism is a very interesting case for showing how it can take place. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura, for your rich and inspiring talk, which brings us to the core of what we are doing here and why. So, I open this discussion. If you have some questions, if you have some... Yeah, I can start. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very, very interesting, very clear, and very well structured as well. But I have a question. I have several questions, but I will try to concentrate my question into two. You were doing a sort of taxonomy of emotions as connected with knowledge. So what about doing also at the same time a taxonomy of knowledge? Because what is knowledge? I mean, here it is like a very clear description about emotions and so on, but maybe it would be useful to understand emotions and knowledge and give a better description also about knowledge. Because, for example, I was thinking about aesthetic knowledge or practical knowledge. We have several types of knowledge. Then, starting from this question, I have another one about the climate change and its problems, fake news, and so on. Knowledge as connected with intelligence.
So what about the relationship between emotions and artificial intelligence? If you are focusing also on this topic. And finally, emotions as general, as you were saying in your presentations, but I also need to give that there are some emotions that are more important than others as related to knowledge. Is there a sort of, how to say, a sort of hierarchy of the emotions? And indeed, connected to this question, I was considering the emotion of the wonder, because you mentioned one of those was in my study company, not working with me. So this emotion as wonder, as curiosity, maybe it can be considered as the first emotion as related to knowledge, but it's just amazing. Also because in the development of the newborn, wonder is one of the most important emotions, even though it's not the first. Because if we consider first emotions like anger or feeling angry and so on, it's not the very first one, but it's important to discover as well. We want that to be just thank you very much for this.
Thank you. There is a lot to say about this. And we have time. Yes. And it's interesting because we don't know each other, but actually you started topics that are very dear to me and that I'm working on since many years.
You are currently the only person in this conference.
Still, when they say that this is what I'm doing, it's like saying,
You just say that the participants who were online just disconnected. So.
Okay, so I don't have really.
Yeah. You can move freely.
Okay, interesting. Yes, I agree that as long as we do some emotions, also like some knowledge is required. And you are right to say that there are different types of emotions. I totally agree. And so we can, it is quite interesting because in vice and beauty epistemology, we often say that it is not just knowing that this was like the traditional form of knowledge, right? Knowing is really knowing about something, and we can reproduce this in a composition, know that, etc. But it's more like knowing how or knowing why. Actually, knowing why is very much stressed. That's really at the ground of knowledge. I can say that I take an inquiry-based approach. So it's very much, it's more on inquiry than knowledge. Or if you want, knowledge is not just taken as a fixed, if you want, collection of information that we have about the world, but it's more practice-oriented, inquiry-oriented, and that's why it's very much informed by the primary institution that I mentioned before. But it's also very interesting what you say about aesthetic knowledge, because you are right, and actually this always is always a problem also when you want to do other some emotions. So when you say what is a prototype of an epistemic emotion, that seems that is an emotion that has to do with what is really knowledge, right? Epistemic knowledge. And they bring curiosity. But we know that curiosity is not just curiosity, it's as you say, some answering, wonder, admiration. And are we sure that it isn't just epistemic knowledge? It's not aesthetic also, because wonder is crucially being appreciated of a piece of art, but aesthetic is even more, really has to do with the sensibility, the affectivity. So in some paper, I argued against this strict distinction and actually really try to open up. And that's why this weaker account of the aesthetic emotions is very interesting because it's pluralistic and really try to show how certain emotions that, for example, I worked on shame very much. Shame is typically acknowledged as a moral emotion, right? And I wanted to show how much shame is crucial in epistemology. Being ashamed of our mistake, for example. In showing this, I say, well, are we really sure that we need to have a distinction between ethics and epistemology in this case, or aesthetics and epistemology? Again, I think that places would agree with me that these divisions are like Well, they are not helping us a lot. Maybe they are helping us in seeking clarity and one romantics, but there is the unity of virtual emotions at a certain point. And well, you were speaking about wonder, and we know that again later say that philosophy starts with someone living part, right? That is grounded in this wonder, that is also wondering if that is this aphoretic state. But it's also interesting how this developed also in terms of admiration. And so again, in beauty epistemology, there is a branch that is based very much on admiration as a fundamental epistemic emotion. Peter Barton worked on Engels and Plesky as well. And the idea there is that virtues and vices are, are learned and experienced in trying to follow the example of someone we admire. So they are really working on, prototypes of teachers or good learners that can orientate our transformation in virtue state. However, and I think that this is quite interesting, the word thinker will say that this is too idealized. Really, it can work in this manner, but we have this idea that knowledge is just pure, neutral, and but really, if we really go into the real life, as Marx epistemology says, it's not the case. And so instead of working on admiration, they say we really need to focus more on these negative emotions, on these conflictual emotions, like guilt, anger, shame that can be there, can be used for producing certain biases. But also about this, I have some problem because, as I told you, that I'm quite suspicious of this demarcation of fields. I'm also suspicious about the dualism between positive and negative emotions. Let's say, okay, as really is not very helpful to understand that shame is just a moral emotion and not an epistemic emotion, for example. What does it mean that shame is just a negative emotion? Well, it might mean that yes, it is painful, but then this pain is also related with maybe a recognition that what I did was wrong. And so there is also there like a positive dimension of wanting to be better. And so I would say that there is ambivalence in that. And this ambivalence is very crucial in my concept of emotional friction, actually. Because affliction can happen only if we have this complex and more nuanced view about our emotional experience. Then lastly, you asked about emotions and artificial intelligence. Yes, of course, this is a hot topic, and I also worked on this. I would say that for now, there are this work on, especially on embodied robotics. So how we can make AI more embodied, so that can display also certain emotions. And interestingly, they are also working in the development of new materials, so that a robot is not just hard iron, but can have like an artificial soft skin that can like touch, and maybe also some hormone reaction can be plugged there. So they are working on this because they are aware that emotions need a body. Remember what we were saying before about the fundamental embodiment of emotion. And I think that this is praiseworthy, it's quite interesting, but until now, I think that we can say that the richness of human and non-human animal emotions, so I would say biological emotions, taking all together, is still not there in artificial intelligence. So they are trying to display emotional concern or emotional affects. Also chatting with ChatGPT to say,
I hope I helped you. Yes, I wish you a pleasurable journey. So is she or he, really concerned about my life, me, or is just expressing this, but not really feeling? Then some experts on artificial intelligence say, does it really matter that an AI is not really feeling, not enough that is displaying it? I leave the question open.
Other questions?
Oh, the question of Christina was quite small, so you can also your answer.
Yes.
Yes. So,
I'm curious really to, I'm speaking with the students, to hear your experience in what you can do, English, etc., etc. But I'm curious to hear what you present and resonate with your experience also as a student. Am I right that emotion can play a role in what you are doing, or not? It's just indifference. What is indifference?
feedback, yeah, we need some feedback.
If you want to do that, you can speak in chat. In English, the problem. But it is an option. Maybe you can stop the embarrassment. Embarrassment is also the option, right?
Yeah, yes, this is the problem of ambivalence. Yeah, you have emotions that can trigger your inquiry, but it can also hinder your inquiry. Maybe the shape is in this example because yes, the shape can trigger the inquiry, as we know from Plato, the dialogues, and so on. But also, you may feel ashamed that you made a wrong answer or something like that, and well, you say something silent and silence you
And especially in a social context, because again, I said, yes, we are not alone and we can help each other, but we know that also the social context, people, this is the other side, you keep saying, no, no, I'm not saying this because now they are judging me in this manner, and then they say, you're making a mistake, etc., etc. So the situation is complex.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you for demonstrating this in such a complex manner. So, here. What kind of emotion do you feel? Are you inquisitive? Do you want to read more? Study more in this field? You just make us wonder.
I think the emotion is fear.
Yeah.
To speak loud in front of others in English. So
Yeah. Are you using ChatGPT?
Yes, so.
And how are you using it? Well, or not?
according to some works submitted by my students to myself, I must say that they use it.
And well or not?
Not very well because I know it's from ChatGPT and
You
I think that they wrote it
It's not a
themselves.
point, very, very precise. And my approach is really not demonizing ChatGPT. and for doing this, I just submitted a paper to a journal, and I declared in the acknowledgement that I used ChatGPT. And I said, well, although this ChatGPT hallucinated sometimes, engaging in a conversation with this helped me a lot to see, to develop deeper understanding. And this is quite interesting because I'm a very dialogical person. So when I'm writing something, I'm always go to my colleagues and ask, now what do you think about this? Blah, blah, blah. But about this topic that was quite specific, I have to admit that my colleagues were not helping me enough. And in that case, ChatGPT did. So I wanted to mention this, and also as a message to my students that is not per se bad using it, but really you need to do it in a useful manner. Also acknowledging that you are using it. So I don't know as a professor if they would say, yes, I used ChatGPT, but you know it was like preparation, and then I gave it a couple of classes. No, this is how I wrote it, but it was my process of thinking about it. I would appreciate it. And actually, I'm also discussing with my colleagues if we can give better grades to the students with disabilities to us, and we as an ethics of knowledge instead of cheating.
Yeah, this is the practical dimension, yeah.
Would you like something like this?
If there are no questions, thank you very much again for for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you.